Welcome to Upside Down Mirror, one woman's true story of a twin flame journey, a reflection of true love, true hate, and everything between, where everything and nothing matters at the same time. Paradigms shatter as mirrors of shadows cut through indestructible layers, testing the sands of time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Upside Down Mirror. In episode 6, Gabe and I had just went to Peru. During that trip, I started to see some energy come from him that was not so appealing, as though he were hiding something. At the time, I would say it was darkness, but I've learned since then to understand that that darkness can only attach through shadows. So he had his own shadows that he had hidden from me, things that I didn't know about. He started feeling very uncomfortable during that trip, becoming irritable, and I began questioning my relationship with him. Ayahuasca is a huge turning point in one's life. When you are called to natural plant medicine, such as ayahuasca, that is when you know you have spiritual intervention happening. Through my journey in Peru, I started to really question the love I had for myself. After all, I'd put up with a lot of stuff. And it's debatable, can someone put up with that much stuff if they truly love themselves? If you've ever wanted somebody so bad that when you finally get them and realize it's not what you thought, but you wanted them so bad that you just keep going because it's what you wanted. So it's like you're trying to trick yourself. There'll be moments of love and days where everything goes perfect, but it can quickly switch to something that you don't like, and you keep making excuses for it. That's all a reflection of a mirror of yourself, an internal world that needs a lot of work done to it. Ayahuasca stepped in and helped me with that work. Through the guidance of my guardian parents and the natural plant medicine, it really, really saved me. So we're back in the United States, and life went on. It was different. Gabe and I started to sleep in different beds. After that ayahuasca trip, it's like there was a knowing inside of him that I wasn't going to get pregnant. So he stopped trying to get me pregnant. And when he didn't want to get me pregnant, he stopped having sex. So we started sleeping in separate beds. He was all the way downstairs and I was all the way upstairs. For me, that is the beginning of an end in a relationship when two people are sleeping separately. At this point, I had owned primary care practices and mental health practices that were going actually quite well. We had a huge population of patients, a psychiatric rehabilitation program where we helped children and their families, a whole mental health section, a whole primary care section, and then there was a telemedicine section. I was the sole owner on paper. However, there was absolutely no way I could do that by myself. It was also very, very overwhelming. And Gabe, being a psychiatrist in the past, having experience in a hospital, And being the person that actually designed and implemented the telemedicine at my practice, I felt was perfect for that job because at this point we were basically living as roommates. And, in the back of my mind, I was still trying to salvage the relationship, thinking if there's something that I can do to empower this man to make him feel as powerful as he once felt, maybe he'll come back in the way that I once knew him, combined with this gentle soul that I had met right after and right before my miscarriage. So I put him in charge of the billing for the telemedicine and the doctor portion of the clinic, as well as the implementation and follow through of the telemedicine. Everything that he did was under my name because I was the sole owner, and he said it was just much easier to do it that way than to have to add him to the whole entire practice. I could see his point because that takes months and months and months to do. I was working very hard and very successful at what I was doing. We had a lot of success within that practice, helping families and kids and people with trauma. I can honestly say I was not happy. I wanted to get out of that career desperately, did not want to be in that career. I was too much of a spiritual person to be boggled down by all this business administrative stuff, dealing with 100 employees and their problems, working 12 to 14-hour days, and then coming home and doing my spiritual practice on the side, occasionally going to California or Seattle or traveling around the world to treat myself to conferences and trainings. There was this one point where I used to say that I lived in heaven and hell. Heaven was when I got to do my spiritual stuff, and hell was going to that practice and dealing with everything. So, in my reality at that time, there was absolutely no way that those two worlds could combine or would combine, and there was really no way out of it. My practice was extremely lucrative. I had a lot of my family members working for me. Gabe was completely 100% dependent on me financially, and I just couldn't see a way out of transitioning without hurting a lot of people, the employees, their families, my family, my significant other at the time. So I just kept moving on with it. However, though, in my reality, the way that I realize now that I'm divinely protected, that was just not going to suffice because your higher self is the part of you that knows what it's doing. So if you think about anything in your life that you think is a mistake, anything you've been through where you feel ashamed of yourself, where you're judging yourself, where you think you might have been quote unquote bad, guess what? It wasn't a mistake. Your higher self is the part of you that is connected to God, Creator, Source. It knows what it's doing. It does what it has to bring you where you need to be. The less connected you are with your higher self, the more suffering and sacrifice that can be in your life because you're not agreeing to do it in an easy way. I wasn't agreeing to give up my practice, to transition 100% into the spiritual world. To be honest with you, I 100% thought I couldn't. My higher self had different plans, which now I'm grateful, but at the time that felt very turbulent. We started to get a lot of audits that I didn't know where they were coming from, requesting folders and medication records. And I would go to Gabe and ask him because these are things that he was in charge of. There's no way I could oversee all the billing. It's just an impossibility to oversee everything as one person. You have to trust the person that you're working with. It definitely was my error in trusting the wrong person. However, my higher self does not think that. Like I said, I know everything happened for a reason, but I spent a lot of money on lawyers getting through these audits, listening to Gabe tell me about these honest billing errors that he had made. And there were errors such as billing under the wrong practitioner for a service, which the service was still rendered. It was just under the wrong practitioner, but that's still not okay to bill that way. And questions about the paperwork of telemedicine, whether or not it was completely the way it needed to be. And of course, he was saying he had it under control. We had emails to prove it, so I trusted him. And, with spending a lot of money on lawyers, I thought we were getting through these audits okay, because outwardly the practice was running very well as far as client treatment and um, the success and client care and the quality of care. So I didn't think too much about it. I mean, we had gotten into some really big fights over it, I'm not going to lie, but I was just too stressed to put 100% of my energy into it when I was trying to salvage my own joy and happiness, spend time with my children, have a life. And there was definitely this deep emptiness within me when Gabe and I stopped making love and stopped being intimate with one another. I tried to go to Mexico, to Cancun, and bring him a beautiful trip, all inclusive, still no romance, no love making, no intimacy. Came back and realized I think this is something that may not work out. This was in the year 2015 when I realized this. I still went on exactly the way I was for quite some time. Some point in the year 2015, Sean and I would just Facebook each other, and he was always kind of putting out there that he was thinking about me or whatever. So one day I was out with a friend and I was drinking a little bit and I was thinking about the baby. And I'm not somebody who has to have 4 children. I already had 3. I have a very happy life, very fulfilled life. I didn't have any type of emptiness inside of me. Yeah, I missed the soul because I knew that soul was very important, the soul that miscarried. But it's not like I was feeling empty without another child. But there was something about that soul. I knew it needed to come in. And I remembered what the guardian parents told me in Peru, that Sean was to be the father. So I had a little bit too much to drink, or maybe not, and Facebooked him, how would you like to be the father of my child? And he immediately Facebooked me back and said, yes, let's do it. I was extremely shocked because I'd only seen him about 3 times in my life and did not think that he would say yes to such a random question, but he did. And once again, this was in the year 2015. I sat on that for a very long time, months and months, and he would occasionally reach out and ask me about it and ask me what his role would be. A part of me still thought that Gabe and I would be together, so I even mentioned Sean being a surrogate for this baby. Thinking back on that, I'm not so sure that the guardian parents probably liked that idea, but Sean said, okay, whatever capacity you want me in this baby's life, I'll do. So he had actually agreed to be a surrogate. So part of me thought, wow, what if I have this baby and Gabe can have the family he's always wanted? He wanted a family so bad, at least that's what he was saying. And I can make the guardian parents happy, the soul can come through, Gabe and I will be happy. Maybe this is a way to salvage the relationship. So 19 months had went by without Gabe and I being intimate even one time. By this time, it was October of 2016. And I woke up one morning and Sean energetically was lying in my bed next to me. He was actually there. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't wishful thinking. His energy was right beside me. And I knew it was time to go visit him. I wasn't thinking about the baby though, because so many months had went by. I just knew I was supposed to see him. So I reached out and told him that I had a business trip where he lived and asked him if he would be up to seeing me. Of course, I really didn't have a business trip. I wanted to bring my friend. I was nervous and I wanted to have an excuse to go. And he said, yes, definitely. So he asked me about where I was staying, when I was coming, and so I hurried up and thought of a date that would benefit me. I wasn't thinking too much into the date. And so we agreed for a later date in October. I would fly down and we'd see each other. I took my best friend with me. We got on the plane. We get to the state in which Sean lives in. We check into the hotel, and it's been, I think, probably at this time, almost 3 years since I had seen Sean. And actually, it was over 3 years that I had seen Sean. The last time I had seen him was the Theta Healing Seminar. So it was probably about 3 years and 4 months since I had seen him. He comes walking into the hotel, and of course, I look at him and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, this man is so good looking. Every time I see him, I think the same thing. He's so good looking, and my heart starts beating, and I can see this reality where I definitely want to be with him. And he lies down, he looks at me, and he asks me how I'm doing, and just starts touching me, ever so gently, hugging me. It was like no time had went by. It's like I'd just seen him yesterday. He looks at me within 30 minutes of seeing me and says, I thought you and I were supposed to have a baby together. I kind of chuckled, but then I started thinking, oh my gosh, I'm ovulating. I was ovulating on the exact day I had decided to go down and see him. That was not planned, but it was a fact. So I said to him, oh, well, I am ovulating. And at this point, we were still under the impression that we didn't really know what his complete role would be. However, before going down and through our Facebook messages, he had mentioned I should get rid of Gabe and him and I should raise the baby together. And once again, it's just one of those situations where you kind of just chuckle at it and really not have an exact response. So I told my best friend who was with me, and she's so very supportive, and she said, okay, let's do some energy work on you. Let's get you prepared for this. And I hugged her because I was like, this is crazy, but yet I know it's right, and you're being so supportive, so I'm very happy that you're here. She's very divine, so she was working on me energetically. And him and I went out that night with my best friend and then went back to his house while she went back to the hotel and made love. And there were certain ways that I was told to make love to him through the art of Tantra, making sure his third eye is open, doing some breathing techniques with him. I was told to do this by my guardian parents because the baby would have to come in a certain way through the breathing. It opens up a different dimension, and then the baby can come in through a higher frequency dimension, is what I was told. So he looks at me in the morning and he says, oh my gosh, you might be the mother of my child. And we were both just looking at each other like, oh my gosh, we can't believe we even did this. This is our 4th time of seeing each other ever, and we might be pregnant. So we spent the day together. It was time to go to the airport to go home, but we were running so late. And on top of it, I thought we were flying American Airlines. So he dropped us off at American Airlines. We look at our ticket and it's really Delta. So we had so much running to do. We were running through the airport. We got through security, or rather we got to security, and one of the security guards pulls me aside and says, ma'am, I need to check you. And he shows me the monitor where my whole reproductive system is orange. And he's like, would you like to get patted down here or go into a private room? And I said, what does that mean? And he said, usually that means you have explosives. And I just thought it was so bizarre that my whole reproductive system was orange. So I said, I don't have time to go to a private room. You're just going to have to pat me down now. Of course, he patted me down and let me leave. But I'll never forget that moment when my reproductive system was lighting up to the point where they thought I had explosives. So we get on the airplane, we go back. And of course, I'm in this reality now where I'm looking at Gabe thinking, what did I just do? Is this good? Is it bad? What's going to happen? I was 41 years old at the time. And so I remember thinking, that's kind of older to have a child. Maybe it didn't even really work. So we went about our life for the next couple weeks because you have to wait a couple weeks to see if you're pregnant. And I was getting very scared. Sean was Facebooking me, asking me, "Did you take a test? How are you feeling?" I took one test and it was negative, and I told him, I just took a test. It's negative, but I was having some symptoms of pregnancy. I wasn't feeling too well. I was very tired, but I wasn't positive. About a week after I took the negative pregnancy test, I took another one, let it sit there for a while, come back, and it is positive. So Sean and I made love one time, and the test was positive. I knew right then that that was some sort of divine sign, okay, that this baby is definitely meant to be. I'm going to be really honest, like I always am. The second I found out that test was positive, I was desperately wanting to be with Gabe. The thought of losing him completely was so overwhelmingly sad. I was going through so much. I look at the positive test, probably ran into his arms like a day later, hugging him and telling him I still have feelings for him, telling him that maybe we can have a family together, that maybe this will work out. He seemed to get excited and start to be very sweet to me for a few days. It took me a few days, but I finally got the courage to tell him that I was pregnant. He was definitely not happy about it, but he actually knew I was going to see Sean. I was very honest about it, told him that we're broke up, we're basically living in the same house, we're not being intimate, we don't kiss, we only work together. You're in charge of the telemedicine and the billing and the doctor aspect of the program. But other than that, I didn't see us having a relationship. So I did tell him I was pregnant. It took him probably a couple weeks to really let that sink in and get used to the fact. But then he actually was excited about it and decided that, yeah, he could potentially be the father of this child. He could help me to raise this child. So I told Sean that if I got pregnant, I would tell him to his face. So when the pregnancy test was first positive, I didn't actually tell him it was positive. I said, I need to come see you. So I got on an airplane, went to see him again. We went to dinner and I told him I was pregnant. And he said, Yeah, I know. He goes, I felt it. I knew you got pregnant. He was so loving and super excited. But once again, it was like I was under some sort of spell. I had no feelings for him. I was spending the night at his house because I had committed to stay there for like a week. We would go on walks together. We would try to do things together. I just wanted to run. I just wanted to run back into Gabe's arms. I wanted to be where I felt secure, where I felt comfortable. So at this point, once again, I was extremely confused. I left Sean's house, flew back on an airplane, and started to live my life. As you know, the beginning stages of pregnancy are rather easy. Just kept running the practice, dealing with these audits that kept popping up, having this relationship with Gabe that I knew deep down was troubled, but trying to repair this because we do have a new life coming, and this is what he wanted, and maybe that is what we need. I was about 14 weeks pregnant, and I had already planned a trip to Seattle to see Dr. Richard Bartlett before I got pregnant, and I was not going to cancel the trip. So I went on the trip to Seattle and was taking his class, and this class had about 300 people in it. It was a matrix energetics class when I started to spot. And I had two miscarriages previously in my life where I always begin spotting when I have miscarriages. I have never spotted with any of my children who were actually born, so I was really concerned. I thought I was going to lose the baby. So I left the room, and I distinctly remember there being like about 300 people and Dr. Bartlett teaching those 300 people on stage. I called an Uber and was waiting for the Uber to come. And I look over my shoulder, and Dr. Bartlett's standing there, and he asks, How are you, Rebecca? And I was like, Wow, where did you come from? And I said, Actually, not too well. I think I might be having a miscarriage. I'm spotting. He tapped into my reproductive system, went into the womb, and saw what was wrong, fixed it right there with his energy work. And he said, okay, you should be good. The vitality is good now. And I still went to the hospital because I wanted to get it checked out. Went there, the heartbeat was fine, everything was good. Dr. Bartlett would turn out to be a major godsend to my child, my pregnancy, and the way things unravel for me in my life. So I definitely knew I was divinely protected. I was meant to be there at that seminar at that time because he was going to be there. So I just knew from my life that, this baby is so meant to be. The confusing part around it all was who was going to raise the baby. So I come back and start to once again to live my life, and about 4 months went by, and Sean reaches out and says, I haven't seen you. I want to spend time with you. Let's get together. So we did. We got together. We spent some time at Deep Creek Lake with our dogs and my other daughter. Had a great time. I always enjoy my time with him. Very loving, very sweet. But I couldn't shake Gabe. I couldn't. Gabe was volunteering to go to ultrasounds with me. I had to go through genetic counseling because the age that I was when I got pregnant, he wanted to go so that he could be there to support me. He was around me a lot at the beginning stages of my pregnancy, showing me his support, telling me how super excited he was to have this child. I started having more contact with Sean because, of course, he was super excited as well. And I would invite him to see me occasionally. I would have holistic fairs that I would do in Rockville, and he would fly and spend some time with me at these holistic fairs. He was very helpful, very loving. I think our communication could have been 100% better. We didn't really talk about deep stuff too much, and maybe it's because he knew what I was going through, but we still had a good time. So as I was having these good times with Sean, and he was the biological father of the baby, I started to question the relationship with Gabe more and more and more. Then I saw full-fledged darkness come out of Gabe. Darkness that was extremely paranormal. I was probably about 7 months pregnant when I started to get very concerned. There were dark energies in my house that my older children were seeing. My oldest child refused to stay there because he said there was eyes staring at him. My second oldest child said he saw something move through the house. And it's just stuff that I couldn't ignore. This darkness, this eerie feeling that I couldn't ignore, where Gabe was still staying downstairs. We were not sleeping in the same bed. We were not being intimate. Even if we were going to be a couple, it would have been a platonic couple because we were not intimate at all after I got pregnant. So that was definitely not in our relationship. It was more of this relationship where I guess I thought that him and I would be together without being intimate. I'm not even really sure now that I think back at it. But I started to hear him talk to these voices he heard. But the strange thing about it is I heard the voices talking back to him. So it's not like he was schizophrenic and he was talking to voices that he thought he heard. He was really talking to beings that were there. I put a recorder down the stairs at one point, a baby recorder, and recorded what he was doing. And he was talking to these beings and saying things like, well, she's human. Humans have to do it this way. He was talking to these beings like they were reptilian and they were giving him instructions. I heard a voice that wasn't his, and I was extremely confused and extremely scared. I really didn't know what to do because periodically I would get mad at Gabe and tell him to leave the house, and he absolutely refused to. He would become mean once again. His eyes would start changing, and he would say, I'm not leaving you. I'm not leaving you. During this time, another one of my best friends came over and was observing the situation, and I didn't even really tell her exactly what I had heard, but she came up to me and she said, do you know he's talking to Grays? And I was like, what? She goes, yeah, he's talking to Grays. I can see that stuff. And they are giving him instructions about what to do. This was a lot to take. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on, but I started to become very weary and, to be honest with you, very scared. So my next ultrasound was at WVU, and I went there, and they told me that the baby's head was going to be too small, that this might be a sign of mental retardation. So I remember thinking about that energy that was in my house. And it just so happens that I had had another seminar scheduled with Dr. Richard Bartlett a month after getting that ultrasound. I went to that seminar. It was an MED seminar. And prior to that seminar, Dr. Bartlett had never worked on people individually in his hotel room. He's a very popular person during the seminars. He just did the seminar, went back to his hotel room, and then we'd see him the next day. But he announced to everyone that he would be doing private sessions. His secretary walked up to me and said, hey, Rebecca, do you want me to schedule you as one of the first people? This is going to fill up really fast. And I was like, yes, I do. Also during that time, I had hurt my knee, so I was hobbling around on my knee and needed that healed as well. But then I had the whole situation going on with the baby's head being too small. And I was doing energy work on myself and the baby, but I was wrapped up in my own ego. And we all know that it's pretty hard to do energy work when you're not in your heart center. So I went to his hotel room, one of the first people scheduled. He instantaneously healed my knee. And his colleague said, what is this emotional stuff that's going on? There's a lot of emotional stuff going on around you. And I said, well, I have a lot of audits at work popping up out of nowhere, based on the guy I'm with and the billing he's doing and the way he's licensing this program, and it's really stressing me out. And she says, okay, we need to get rid of that emotional stuff from your knee as well. And they did, and I felt my knee go completely back to normal. He touched my womb and he said, okay, her head is going to be fine. I'm going to fix it right now. And he was putting his hands on my womb. And at the same time, his colleague had asked to give me these downloads from this very high frequency. I have never felt downloads like that in my entire life. These downloads were going through my crown chakra, and my whole entire body was convulsing. It was like I could feel threads go through me. It was light. It was very high frequency. It felt amazing, but my whole body was convulsing and shaking, and he was holding the womb saying, this is going into the baby's crown chakra. This is going into the baby's crown chakra. I sat up, and even though I knew that that was in my highest and best interest, whatever that was from the frequency of my guardian parents, I felt doom. Whatever I just did was going to help me, but not in a way that I wanted. And I knew that. I looked at him and I said, what are the consequences of this healing? And he knew what I meant, and he just said, you're going to be okay. Because part of that healing was taking care of the whole work situation and being trapped within a work that I did not like. So I left. A couple weeks later, went back to WVU, had another ultrasound, and then they asked me why I was there. They're like, why are you even here? The baby's head is fine. They shouldn't have even scheduled you. Happy as can be, I was very, very grateful to Dr. Bartlett and his colleague. Left there feeling like $1,000,000. Reached out to Sean, told him of the whole situation, and he was definitely concerned about the whole dark energy that was going on around me, but very happy about the healing to the baby's head. So I'm going to stop right now and leave you with the reflection on what I'm saying. If you think about everything that I'm saying, even recording this podcast right now, as I record it, I look at things and I see things that you're probably saying, this was right in front of your face. You didn't see this? How stupid can you be, Rebecca? I didn't see it at the time because it was too much right in front of me. Now, as I'm recording this podcast and telling the story, I realized that my ability to think clearly obviously was gone at that point in my life. Whether it be I was being affected by these reptilian dark energies, I wasn't in my heart space. I think both of those go together. I think when you're dealing with reptilian energies, or rather, I know that when you're dealing with reptilian energies, the key is to get into your heart space, to think from the field of the heart, and to completely unconditionally love yourself. These energies can feel very powerful. They're actually quite addictive. I've spoke with many people who have been through this sense, and they seem to have the same struggle as what I had, and that is not being able to get away from it. Even though your brain tells you this isn't good for you, it's like you're in some sort of trance. It feels like that's the only love that is going to make you happy or bring you joy. So you'll do whatever it takes to hold on to that love, not trusting that there is a purer, more innocent form of love that would come for you. I'm going to continue my story in episode 8 of Upside Down Mirror. As always, thank you for listening.